Every city has a founder, someone with a vision of what that city could become. For Night City, that man was Richard Knight. An urban planner by trade, he believed that through thoughtful design, modern infrastructure, and careful planning, humanity could escape the crime, corruption, and decay consuming America's cities. That dream became Coronado City, but as powerful corporations poured money into the project, Richard's influence began to fade. The city was no longer being shaped for its people, it was being shaped for profit. Before he could reclaim his vision, Richard Knight was murdered under mysterious circumstances, and the city was renamed in his honor. The city now bearing his name would become everything he sought to prevent. As a free city, it maintained its own government, security forces, and laws, allowing it to serve as a neutral ground where corporations, governments, gangs, and individuals could pursue their own interests. From Italy's Biotechnica, Japan's Arasaka, and Russia's Savoy, corporations from around the world established headquarters within its borders, competing for influence in one of the most important economic centers on the planet. And in the cracks between, gangs and other groups formed to profit from its corruption. Even after the data crash and the devastation of the fourth corporate, the stains remained, and every district carries a piece of that. A unique history, architecture, lifestyle, corporate presence, gangs, and more that help to define each of these locations. So today, we'll explore every major district of Night City, uncovering how they evolved from Richard Knight's original vision to what we see in Cyberpunk 2077. And all of this will be sourced directly from the tabletop RPGs written by Mike Pondsmith and R. Talzorian Games since the late 1980s. So if you enjoy cyberpunk lore and theories, don't forget to subscribe and check out my other videos. But before we begin, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Lumibricks. One of the things that makes Night City so memorable is its architecture. Every street tells a story, from towering corporate skyscrapers to neon-lit storefronts tucked away in crowded alleyways. It's that dense, layered aesthetic that makes the city feel alive. Lumibricks captures that same atmosphere with their collection of illuminated building sets. I recently had the opportunity to build their izakaya set from their Cyberpunk collection. While it isn't officially affiliated with Mike Pondsmith's Cyberpunk universe, it absolutely captures the neon-soaked aesthetic that fans of the genre will appreciate. The build itself was a lot of fun, but what really brings it to life are the integrated lights. They were surprisingly easy to route throughout the structure while keeping the wiring hidden. And unlike mini brick sets, I never had to stop and apply stickers. Every design is printed directly onto the pieces, which is a small detail that makes a big difference. Once everything is assembled and powered on, it becomes a stunning display piece that has earned a permanent spot in my office, sitting right behind me whenever I'm on camera. And considering you're getting 1,987 pieces for just $130, it's an incredible value. If you'd like to add a little neon to your own collection, be sure to check out Lumibricks using a link in the description below. Doing so also helps support the channel. A huge thanks to Lumibricks again for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's head back to the streets of Night City. If there is one district that best represents Richard Knight's dream and its eventual corruption, it's City Center. Originally known as the City and Corporate District, this area was envisioned as the centerpiece of Coronado City, divided into 8 distinct neighborhoods, each with its own architectural identity and cultural character. His goal was to create a vibrant metropolis where businesses, communities, and cultures could thrive together. Filled with glittering skyscrapers, landscaped parks, and modern infrastructure, it served as the economic heart of the city. Many of its landmark buildings were personally influenced by Knight's architectural philosophy, designed to symbolize innovation, prosperity, and humanity's future. But Richard Knight never lived to see that vision completed. Following his assassination, the balance he had hoped to create gave way to corporate influence. Over the following decades, the district became the headquarters of the world's most popular mega corporations, while the surrounding neighborhoods slowly fractured under the competing interest of governments, corporations, and gangs. Then came the Fourth Corporate War. In 2023, the rivalry between Arasaka and Militech reached its climax in Night City. The destruction of Arasaka Tower An event remembered as the AHQ disaster ended with the detonation of a nuclear device in the heart of the city. More than 500,000 people were killed. The government collapsed. Emergency services were overwhelmed. Thousands fled to the suburbs, where they would be overflowed with tents, while the once proud corporate district was reduced to a radioactive wasteland. For the next 2 decades, this area became known as the Hot Zone. By the time of Cyberpunk Red, the district had become one of the most dangerous places in Night City. Collapsed skyscrapers, irradiated ruins, and abandoned streets stretched for miles, making it a constant reminder of the city's darkest day. Rebuilding the district became one of the largest construction projects in Night City history. Nomad families, including the Aldecados, worked alongside countless volunteers and construction crews to clear irradiated debris, while Night Corp equipped workers with free protective cyberware to survive the hazardous cleanup. By 2052, the radiation had finally been reduced to safe levels, allowing corporations to begin reclaiming the land. Almost immediately, construction began on a new corporate plaza. Parks and memorials were established to honor those lost in the disaster, but they also marked the beginning of a new era. As corporations returned and investments poured into the city, many of the nomad families who helped rebuild City Center found themselves pushed back out. In the 2060s, City Center experienced an unprecedented construction boom. Towering office complexes replaced piles of rubble. Luxury apartments rose where craters once stood, and bold new architecture became a symbol of Night City's rebirth. Following the Unification War, Arasaka was welcomed back to Night City in 2070. The corporation was given permission to construct its new HQ on the exact site where the original tower had fallen decades earlier. Within only a few years, the new Arasaka Tower dominated the skyline once again. By 2077, the city center still symbolized who held the real power in Night City, with corpos and tourists being the most prominent visitors of the area. A combat zone refers to any urban area which has been mostly abandoned by the local government, and where law enforcement agencies have limited to non-existent power, making combat zones lawless no-go areas where gangs are usually in control of large territories. Night City's first combat zone appeared in the late 1990s, consuming portions of South Night City as gangs gradually displaced any remaining authority. By the late 2010s, however, the city had even greater ambitions. It began claiming land from San Moro Bay, expanding southeast with plans to construct a new industrial district that would fuel the city's continued growth, but it never happened. The outbreak of the Fourth Corporate War halted construction. The unfinished district was abandoned before it could even fulfill its purpose, leaving behind empty buildings, unfinished infrastructure, and little reason for anyone to return. Gangs were quick to fill the empty streets. The abandoned development quickly became one of the worst combat zones Night City had ever seen. As refugees fled the destruction elsewhere in the city and law enforcement struggled to maintain order, violence spread beyond its borders. Before long, the old combat zone had become the epicenter from which other combat zones emerged, engulfing parts of South Night City, Old Japantown, and Little China. By the time of Red, entire neighborhoods were controlled by gangs that divided territory street by street, fighting over scarce resources, while the city's appointed managers had virtually no authority. The NCPD and corporate security occasionally launched violent crackdowns, only to withdraw once the operation was over. Officials often compared these raids to cutting back weeds, temporary solutions to a problem that always returned. Yet even here, there were people who believed the district could be saved. Organizations such as Edgerunners Inc. attempted to reconnect the old combat zone with the rest of Night City, providing security and slowly reclaiming territory. By 2045, their leader, Brick Coleman, had become the area's unofficial city manager, proving that even the city's most dangerous district wasn't entirely beyond redemption. By 2077, it had disappeared, with its territories being returned to its former districts, with a new combat zone appearing in Pacifica that would eventually be claimed by Kurt Hansen and his Barghest militia. Watson is the district of second chances and broken promises, once envisioned as the future of Night City's recovery. Its streets are packed with immigrants chasing opportunity, towering mega buildings built to house thousands, and markets where almost anything can be bought if you're willing to look hard enough. Neon signs illuminate cramped alleyways lined with food vendors, ripper docks, and black market merchants, while abandoned factories loom over neighborhoods that never quite reach the prosperity they were promised. For many newcomers, Watson is where life in Night City begins. For many others, it's where their dream quietly ends. Following the devastation of the Fourth Corporate War, much of central Night City lay in ruins. Hundreds of thousands of displaced citizens suddenly needed somewhere to live, and the city's future became uncertain. The answer was Watson. Originally, much of the district consisted of suburban communities north of the city, including portions of North Oak and neighboring Westbrook. Before the war, it was home to comfortable middle-class families, but as conflict consumed Night City, many of its original residents fled. Their departure created an opportunity. A coalition of Japanese corporations known as the Night City Co-Prosperity Sphere, or NCCS, saw the district as the ideal place to rebuild, investing billions of euro dollars into housing, transportation, factories, and public infrastructure. They transformed the area into what became known as the Watson development. The district quickly became a refuge for those who had lost everything. Families displaced from the ruins of old Japantown were settled into what became Kabuki, while refugees from Little China and other devastated neighborhoods filled Watson's southern districts. Over the following years, immigrants from China and across Asia continued arriving, turning Watson into one of the most culturally diverse places in Night City. And to protect these growing communities, the NCCS contracted the Tiger Claws to act as the district's security force. And for a time, Watson was thriving. During the time of Red, many believed Watson would become the new heart of Night City. Residential mega buildings rose above the skyline. A new monorail connected the district to the recovering city center, and the Northside Industrial District, or NID, became home to cutting-edge factories that provided stable employment for thousands of residents. For a brief moment, Richard Knight's dream seemed possible once again, but as Night City entered the construction boom of the 2060s, investment gradually shifted back towards the rebuilt city center and the luxury of developments of Westbrook. Then, following the Unification War, Arasaka returned. The corporation sought control of Watson's valuable waterfront and entered in a direct competition with the NCCPS. Despite years of investment, the smaller consortium simply couldn't compete with one of the world's most powerful mega corporations. One by one, its member corporations withdrew. The Co-Prosperity Sphere collapsed, and with it, Watson's golden age came to an end. Without its corporate backing, factories closed, businesses disappeared, and many of the district's wealthier residents relocated elsewhere. The Northside Industrial District, once envisioned as a center of advanced manufacturing, became a landscape of abandoned factories, rusting warehouses, and empty apartment blocks. The vacuum left behind was quickly filled by gangs. Maelstrom established a stronghold in Northside, while the Tiger Claws retained control over much of Kabuki and Little China. Kabuki transformed from a planned refugee settlement into Night City's largest black market bazaar. Its narrow alleyways became home to ripper docks, brain dance dealers, cyberware smugglers, and merchants willing to sell almost anything for the right price. This makes Watson a prime target for scabs, a ruthless group that kidnaps and harvests people's organs and implants for resale. Little China evolved into one of the city's busiest neighborhoods, packed with restaurants, markets, mega buildings, and cultures from across the globe. It became a melting pot of immigrants searching for a better life. And along the eastern shoreline, Arasaka waterfront stands as a lasting reminder of Watson's downfall. The location that ended the district's prosperity is now one of Arasaka's most heavily fortified facilities. Completely separated from the surrounding neighborhoods, it helped reshape. By 2077, Watson is considered one of the poorest and most dangerous districts in Night City, but it's also become one of the most iconic. It's here that V's journey begins in 2077, introducing players to the crowded markets of Kabuki, the towering streets of Little China, and the industrial sprawl of Northside before the rest of the city opens up. And more recently, Watson once again took center stage in the first teaser for Edgerunners 2, proving that even decades after its fall from prominence, it remains one of the defining locations of Night City. While it isn't considered one of Night City's official districts, the NorCal military base has played a critical role in the city's history for decades. Located just north of Watson, the sprawling installation exists as a city within a city, one operating under its own laws, chain of command, and military authority. Its origins date back to 2016, following the Californian Separation War. As part of a treaty recognizing Northern California as a free state, the U.S. was permitted to establish a permanent military installation at North Oak. The arrangement benefited both sides. The U.S. maintained a strategic foothold on the West Coast, while Northern California gained a heavily fortified defense against both foreign aggression and its southern neighbor. By 2020, the base had become one of the largest military installations in the region, housing elements from every branch of the U.S. Armed Forces, complete with an airfield, naval harbor, armored divisions, military hospital, exchange, and even its own residential neighborhoods. It functioned as a self-contained community, supporting thousands of personnel and their families. When the Fourth Corporate War engulfed Night City, forces stationed at the base joined the US and Militech in the assault against Arasaka, but the nuclear devastation of 2023 changed everything. With supply lines shattered and communication with the federal government collapsing, the installation could no longer depend on Washington for survival. Rather than disband, its commanders adapted. In 2027, General Giovanni formally pledged the base's allegiance to the Free State of Northern California, reorganizing its forces into the Estero Bay military cog. A year later, the base officially became part of Night City's expanding boundaries while retaining an extraordinary degree of autonomy. Although physically connected to Night City, it remained legally separate. The military police became the sole law enforcement authority inside the installation, operating under the Uniform Military Code of Justice rather than civilian law. Even the NCPD could only enter when invited to assist with particularly complex investigations, all of which is pretty standard for a military base. And of course, life inside reflected that independence. Nearly everyone living there, soldiers, sailors, airmen, spouses, civilian workers, and support staff, was required to enlist in the COG Reserve, making them members of the military organization. Children attended military schools, family lived in military housing, and daily life revolved around service. The only notable exception was Militech, whose employees maintained both corporate offices and housing inside the base after signing agreements to help train and equip the COG. Throughout the time of Red, the NorCal military base became one of the most heavily defended locations in Northern California. Its forces protected much of the state's coastline, fought raiders and Raffen Shiv incursions, and contended with autonomous naval mines left behind by the Fourth Corporate War. Yet even behind its fortified walls, politics remained just as dangerous as the battlefield. A secret organization known as the Corpo Ring quietly operated from within. Loyal to the old US, its members believed Northern California should one day return to federal control, and secretly funneled intelligence to American agents throughout the region. By 2045, the leaks had become serious enough that General Giovanni personally ordered military police to uncover and dismantle the network. Westbrook is a city corporations sell in their advertisements. Quiet tree-lined streets, luxury hotels, Michelin star restaurants, mansions overlooking the bay. Every corner is immaculate, every park perfectly maintained, and every neighborhood designed to make its residents forget the chaos only a few miles away. A tranquility that is bought and protected by some of the most advanced private security money can buy. Long before the Fourth Corporate War, Westbrook was already considered one of the most desirable places to live in Night City. Built across the rolling hills overlooking the bay, the district was designed as a carefully planned residential paradise where executives, celebrities, and the city's elite could live far removed from the chaos below. Unlike the crowded streets of Watson or the towering offices of City Center, Westbrook was defined by privacy. Its winding roads, parks, and luxurious estates were protected by some of the most advanced security systems money could buy. Multiple checkpoints guarded every entrance into the hills. Surface-to-air missile battery systems monitored the skies above, and automated apex defense systems patrolled the surrounding landscape. Even a simple morning jog required residents to carry biometric identification linked directly to their bodies. lose your identity card, and the automated defense systems could mistake you for an intruder. For the wealthy, however, these precautions were worth it. Other parts of the hills even had hunting grounds, offering plenty of sport for visitors. In 2020, Biotechnica released their new Mule Deer 2000 for residents to hunt. Executives from Arasaka, Petrochem, EBM, and countless other corporations called Westbrook home, alongside politicians, celebrities, artists, and some of Night City's most influential figures. Corporate executives considered it one of the safest places in the city to house high-value personnel, and in the decades before the Fourth Corporate, only a single corporate extraction attempt was ever made within its borders. The operation ended in disaster, leaving 3 AV-4 gunships destroyed and dozens of Militech soldiers dead. But then came the Fourth Corporate War. While much of Night City was reduced to rubble, Westbrook escaped the worst of the physical destruction, but it couldn't escape the humanitarian crisis that followed. Thousands of refugees poured into the surrounding suburbs, erecting sprawling tent cities across the district. The sharp divide between wealth and poverty became impossible to ignore. Some of the richest people in Night City now lived only blocks away from families who had lost everything. But rather than integrate these communities, the wealthy built walls. The affluent residents of the old executive estates enclosed themselves inside what became known as the executive zone, physically separating their luxurious neighborhood from the growing refugee camps surrounding it. By the time of Red, this contrast defined Westbrook. Expensive homes and corporate compounds stood beside overcrowded tent cities, while reconstruction projects slowly reshaped the district. New mega buildings were connected to house, and a high-security end-cart monorail linked Westbrook to the recovering city center and the Watson development. As Night City entered its construction boom of the 60s, the district underwent another transformation. With City Center once again becoming the financial heart of the metropolis, Westbrook reinvented itself as the city's premier luxury district. Wealthy residents expanded the executive zone, lobbying city officials to legitimize their growing influence before hiring private mercenaries to forcibly remove many of the refugees living nearby. And so the tent cities disappeared, and by 2077, Westbrook had become one of the wealthiest and safest districts of Night City. Heywood is Night City's neighborhood. More people live here than almost anywhere else, making it the city's largest residential district. From the government buildings and upscale apartments of the Glen to the waterfront restaurants of Wellsprings and the crowded streets of Vista del Rey, Heywood contains every layer of Night City's middle and working class. It's a district built around families, local businesses, churches, and community, where generations of residents have forged an identity stronger than the corporations surrounding them. Life isn't easy here, but unlike much of Night City, people still know their neighbors. Before the Fourth Corporate War, the area that would eventually become Heywood was largely made up of industrial neighborhoods and working class communities. When war consumed the city, those neighborhoods became a refuge for thousands fleeing the devastation spreading across Night City. Then came the AHQ disaster. As the nuclear destruction of 2023 displaced even more survivors, the district became overwhelmed with refugees. Tent cities stretched across entire neighborhoods, while nomad families established massive reconstruction camps to begin the enormous task of rebuilding the city. And in 2028, Heywood officially became one of Night City's official districts. But rebuilding didn't solve everything. As more people arrived, wealth gradually divided the community. The northern neighborhoods prospered while the southern district struggled with poverty, eventually leading to the creation of the separate Santo Domingo district in 2038. Yet perhaps the most fascinating part of Heywood's history is that the district wasn't always located where it is today. During the time of Red, the area players knew as Heywood was actually called South Night City, a notorious combat zone consumed by gangs, abandoned buildings, and violence. Meanwhile, the original Heywood existed farther southeast. As reclaimers slowly restored South Night City, it became a surprisingly attractive place to live. Eventually, residents from Old Heywood relocated into the revitalized neighborhood, displacing many of the very people who had rebuilt it. And when they arrived, they brought the name Heywood with them. In a sense, the district itself moved. And by the 2070s, Heywood had become a district of striking contrast. Its northern neighborhoods bordering city center featured modern apartments, parks, and government buildings. While the farther south and east you traveled, the older the architecture became. Wealth slowly gave way to aging apartment blocks, colorful street markets, and tightly packed residential communities. Unlike the towering corporate districts, Heywood developed into Night City's primary residential borough, a place where people from nearly every walk of life could find somewhere to live. Its neighborhoods each reflected a different side of that identity. The Glen became the district's administrative and commercial heart, home to City Hall, Reconciliation Park, and some of the district's most desirable housing. Wellsprings balanced tourism with suburban life, offering waterfront restaurants, small businesses, and relatively safe neighborhoods that gradually transitioned into older working-class streets farther inland. And then there was Vista del Rey, the poorest and most dangerous neighborhood in Heywood. It was here that the district's struggles became most apparent, as poverty, crime, and neglect created fertile grounds for gangs to compete for territory. None were more influential than the Valentinos. Unlike many of Night City's gangs, the Valentinos weren't simply criminals, they were deeply rooted in the local community. While involved in organized crime, many residents viewed them as protectors of the neighborhood, enforcing their own sense of honor and often looking after the people who called Heywood home. Standing against them was 6th Street, whose growing influence sparked an increasingly violent conflict over control of Vista del Rey by 2077. That gang war serves as a backdrop for most of Heywood's modern history. Santo Domingo keeps Night City alive. While its skyline lacks the glamour of City Center or Westbrook, its factories generate the electricity, manufacture the products, and fuel the industries that power the entire metropolis. Massive power plants, automated assembly lines, warehouses, and refineries dominate the landscape, while countless workers return home each night to sprawling mega buildings and quiet suburban neighborhoods. Long before it became its own district, Santo Domingo was simply the southern half of the original Heywood. During the time of Red, nomad families established massive camps throughout the district, making it one of the largest centers of reconstruction in all of Night City. For years, the nomads held enormous influence over the district's future, helping rebuild roads, restore infrastructure, and reconnect the city after the devastation of the war. Eventually, however, the reconstruction ended, and corporations returned. By the mid-21st century, Santo Domingo was transformed into Night City's industrial backbone. Rather than preserving its aging factories, corporations adopted a cycle of constant redevelopment, employing old facilities only to replace them with newer, more efficient ones. The district became a proving ground for industrial technology, where experimental manufacturing methods and massive infrastructure projects could be tested far away from the polished streets of city center. But while the corporations invested in production, they invested far less in the people producing it. Much of Santo Domingo's workforce found themselves living inside overcrowded mega buildings, working long hours in factories that powered Night City's economy while hoping for opportunities that rarely came. No neighborhood reflects that contrast better than Arroyo. Often described as the industrial heart of a city, it's a landscape where towering power plants, scrapyards, refineries, and automated factories exist side by side. Working facilities maintain heavily armed private security, while abandoned plants are quickly reclaimed by gangs looking to exploit what the corporations left behind. And when the shift ends, many workers return to Rancho Coronado. Unlike the towering apartment blocks found elsewhere in Night City, Rancho Coronado is defined by rows of modest suburban homes, designed to create the illusion of stability. On the surface, it resembles the quiet American suburbs of the 20th century, but beneath that familiar appearance lies the same economic struggle found throughout the district. It was from these working-class neighborhoods that one of Night City's most influential gangs emerged. Formed by disillusioned military veterans who believed the government had abandoned them after the corporate wars, 6th Street established Santo Domingo as its home. Presenting themselves as protectors of local communities, they quickly expanded their influence throughout the district, though their ideals gradually gave way to the same criminal enterprises they originally claimed to oppose. Long before abandoned malls and unfinished skyscrapers defined a skyline, Pacifica was one of Night City's premier coastal communities. Nestled between the Pacific Ocean and the Western Hills, it was known for its beaches, luxury residences, and thriving entertainment industry. Families visited Playland by the sea while wealthy residents escaped the crowded streets farther inland. Then came the Fourth Corporate War. As fighting spread across Night City, thousands of refugees poured into Pacifica seeking safety. After the nuclear devastation of 2023, those numbers only grew. Tent cities replaced luxury neighborhoods. Beachfront condos fell into decline, and much of Pacifica's entertainment industry disappeared. Only one attraction managed to survive: Playland by the Sea. Its continued popularity convinced both Night City's government and its corporations that Pacifica could still become the city's premier tourist destination. By the late 2050s, billions of euro dollars flowed into an enormous redevelopment effort. Militech, Petrochem, EBM, and countless construction firms envisioned a luxury resort unlike anything on the West Coast. Hotels, casinos, shopping centers, sports arenas, and entirely new neighborhoods were planned across the coastline, and for a brief moment, Pacifica looked like it would become Night City's greatest success story. But everything would crumble when a mysterious explosion beneath one of the construction sites forced work to stop. Although officials never identified the cause, rumors linked the disaster to Militech's long-abandoned Sinoshore facilities hidden beneath the district. Construction eventually resumes, but Pacifica's future was dealt its final blow when the Unification War erupted in 2069. As corporations feared Night City would become a battleground, investors abandoned the project almost overnight. Billions vanished, construction crews disappeared, and the skyline was left frozen in time. Unfinished hotels, empty shopping centers, and skeletal towers stretching across the coastline. The corporations had abandoned Pacifica, and they had abandoned its people. The homeless occupied unfinished buildings. Refugees settled inside construction sites. Criminal organizations moved into the vacuum left behind. Among these communities were thousands of Haitian immigrants displaced by climate disasters back home. As the NCPD withdrew, a group of elite net runners known as the Voodoo Boys emerged to protect their community. Over time, they evolved into the district's dominant power, resisting both city officials and the corporations attempting to reclaim Pacifica while providing services the city no longer would. By 2072, the NCPD formally abandoned the district, declaring Pacifica a combat zone. By 2077, Pacifica had become one of the most dangerous places in Night City. Mayor Lucius Rhine even removed it from the city's official administrative boundaries, allowing its crime statistics to disappear from the Night City records, without changing anything for the people still living there. Born in the NUSA, Kurt Hansen grew up running with juvenile gangs before enlisting in the Militech Armed Forces as soon as he came of age. His natural leadership and ability to adapt under pressure allowed him to rise through the ranks at an exceptional pace, eventually becoming one of Militech's youngest colonels. Over the course of his military career, Hansen participated in covert operations across the globe, building an extensive network of contracts, intelligence assets, and logistical support that would later prove invaluable. In 2067, Militech placed him in command of Barghest, an elite urban combat and pacification unit specifically trained for high-intensity operations in densely populated cities. When the Unification War erupted in 2069, Hansen and Barghest were tasked with Operation Midnight Storm, establishing a beachhead inside Night City to prepare for a full NUSA invasion. Their forces successfully captured the EBM Petrochem Stadium in eastern Pacifica, securing one of the most strategically important positions in the city. But before the invasion could begin, the war ended. Following the signing of the Arvin Accord on June 9, 2070, Hansen received orders to withdraw alongside the rest of the NUSA's forces. He refused. Ignoring both Militech and the NUSA, Hansen abandoned his former allegiance and declared the occupied district his own. The unfinished development of Pacifica was transformed into an independent military enclave, and soon after, it was renamed to Dogtown. Barghest retained much of its military structure. Hansen remained its colonel, while his former officers served as his senior commanders. Although organized like a professional army, recruitment eventually expanded beyond veterans, welcoming mercenaries, experienced Edgerunners, and anyone capable of proving their value. Publicly, Hansen portrayed Barghest as Dogtown's protectors and lawkeepers, claiming they kept order where Night City had failed. In reality, their rule was maintained through overwhelming military force, and they frequently worked alongside or fought against groups like the Voodoo Boys and Scavengers whenever it suited their interests. Rather than depending on Night City, Hansen built an independent economy. Vargas possessed enormous stockpiles of military hardware left over from the Unification War, allowing them to become one of the region's largest arms dealers through Hansen's armory. Smuggling routes brought weapons, technology, and supplies in the district through heavily protected tunnels and regular AV drops. Businesses operating inside Dogtown paid registration fees to Vargas, while civilians often found themselves paying whatever their soldiers demanded. Even the crashed cargo aerostat embedded inside of the EBM stadium found a new purpose. Rather than dismantling it, Vargas repurposed its nuclear reactor to provide electricity for the district, allowing Dogtown to function independently from Night City's infrastructure. Officially, Dogtown existed completely outside the city's control, and many powerful people preferred it that way. Executives, smugglers, mercenaries, fixers, and criminals all found opportunities within Hansen's walls. The absence of conventional law created one of the world's largest black markets, where military technology, experimental cyberware, classified information, and illegal weapons could all be bought for the right price. But while Dogtown's elite prospered, ordinary residents lived under constant military occupation, trading corporate rule for the iron grip of a self-appointed warlord. In 2077, Dogtown became the stage for one of the most consequential events in Night City's modern history. After President Rosalind Meyer's Space Force One was shot down over the district, V found themselves caught between the NUSA, the FIA, Kurt Hansen, and the forces operating beyond the Black Wall. Depending on the choices made, Hansen's rule could come to an end, Dogtown's balance of power could be reshaped, and secrets surrounding Rogue AI and Project Cynosaur could fall into the hands of some of the most powerful organizations on Earth. Those events may have implications far beyond Phantom Liberty itself. Between Militech's hidden research, the growing threat beyond the Black Wall, and the fragile peace between the world's megacorps, Dogtown may have quietly set the stage for both a future Fifth Corporate War and the next major conflict facing humanity. But that's a story for a future video. And that, Shrooms, is everything I have to say about the districts of Night City. I hope you all enjoyed this deep dive and learned something new about Night City, one of the most iconic locations in gaming history. With Cyberpunk Edgerunners 2 on the horizon, I'm interested to hear what you all think. Are you excited to return to Night City? Do you think the new story will explore the growing threat of the Black Wall? And what happens if the barrier between humanity and rogue AIs begins to collapse? Let me know your thoughts down below. A huge thanks again to today's sponsor, Lumibricks. Their Izakaya set has been an awesome addition to my collection, and I'm looking forward to building more of their neon-lit creations in the future. If you want to check out their cyberpunk-inspired sets for yourself, make sure to use the link down below. And another thank you to all the channel members up on screen. I've been having a lot of fun creating content again, and once I finish up these next few long-form videos, I have some plans to return to more short-form content as well. Those videos naturally take a bit of a backseat to these larger projects, but I'm excited to start expanding that side of the channel again. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out my other socials using the media link below. It includes my audio-only Spotify, my in-universe podcast, and much, much more. As always, thank you for watching all the way to the end. Have a great week, and I will see you later, Chooms.